Hello, I'm Brian Critchell and I'm here today with Kay Carberry, the Assistant General Secretary of the TUC. Kay, thank you for inviting us.
My pleasure.
Can I pick up on another aspect of low-paid employees, and that's the current public sector, private sector debate. Again, I think the media stokes this up and public perception perhaps is misplaced, but perhaps not. The general perception is that public sector pensions are much more generous than the private sector. But there are an awful lot of low-paid people in the public sector whose pensions are probably quite modest. And in the days when your public sector pension was the recompense for low pay, I think most taxpayers would have gone with that. But hasn't the apple cart been rather upset by the way in which managerial, senior executive, lots of other key pay rates have been jacked up in the war for talent that we particularly saw under the previous administration, revamp of public services. But their pension rights have been wrapped up too, so isn't that distorting the picture? And perhaps I shouldn't mention them and us in the context of higher paid versus lower pay, but isn't that really what's doing the damage? How can we deal with that, do you think?
There's been a lot of nonsense spoken about public sector pensions, and I'm very glad that John Hutton exploded the main myth that we hear all the time, and that is that they're gold-plated, and he said in terms that they are not. The average pension in payment is rather low. You asked me about the pensions at the top of the public sector. Well, the gap between those few high-paid executives at the top of the public sector and their pensions is dwarfed by the gap between the top and the bottom in pension provisions in the private sector. Boardrooms award themselves pensions that are about 26% higher than the average worker's pension in the private sector. The average accrual rate for those pensions is about 30ths, and the average pension pot will yield a pension of around $250,000. So if you're talking about gaps between the top and bottom, let's look at the private sector. I think another interesting fact that came out of John Hutton's interim report was that with the change to CPI indexing in the public sector, together with the reforms that we've already seen, including the cap and share measures that will be coming in, the average value of a public sector pension has declined over the last few years by 25%. So the idea that public sector workers are living the life of Riley on high salaries when incidentally the public sector has been experiencing pay freezes and below inflation increases and will go on doing so, and then that they will be retiring on these lavish pensions is absolute nonsense.
Well, I think I agree with you that there have been pay freezes and there have been all sorts of other measures that have reduced value, but there haven't been pay freezes for the low paid. Public sector workers earning 21,000 or less, I believe, have not had their pay frozen. But even in the private sector, experts are now saying that the low paid, which I would put as anyone who earns less than national average earnings or thereabout, are better off in a defined benefit type scheme where they don't have to take any investment risk. But that doesn't mean to say that those who earn at middle management and senior management level shouldn't have something different. And Hutton has pointed towards the need to review that particular area. But he's also asked people to pay more for their own pension. Something which there has been quite a lot of outcry from the public sector about making employees pay more. But isn't that surely preferable to taking the defined benefit away from them altogether?
Well, we haven't seen John Hutton's final report yet, and whatever he comes out with, we hope that there will be discussions with the unions. The way the unions in the public sector look on this is that they already negotiated reforms to public sector pensions back in 2005, which have resulted in, for example, a career average scheme in the civil service and other changes that you'll know about. And as John Hutton also told us, the result, together with the change to CPI indexing, has considerably reduced the value of pensions. So unions are not in a mood to accept that they are, in the public sector, being treated somehow to lavish pensions, which need to be reformed further. So unions are always open to discussing this, and I'm sure that once John Hutton has reported, there will be further negotiations. But you can't really expect unions to take any other attitude to this area than they already have, particularly when public sector workforce is under so much pressure.
As it is indeed. Well, I think we need to wait for Hutton's final report. That's true, and I hope that we might have an opportunity to come and talk to you again when it's been published. So thank you very much indeed for your time, Kay.
Thank you.
And I hope that you found it illuminating and rewarding, and that you won't hesitate to give us your feedback through the site so that we can indeed pass it on to the TUC. Thank you for watching.